Mandy is a new film starring Nicolas Cage that I think a lot of people are going to be talking about. It is best described as a dark, grindhouse, nightmare, revenge fantasy. It ticks a lot of boxes due to the way that it's shot, the story, and just the general presentation. It centres around Nicolas Cage's character, who is a lumberjack in 1983, and he lives in the woods with his wife, and they're very much in love. One night his wife is spotted by a cult leader, and he wants her. Promptly, the wife gets taken by the cult leader in their home. Nicolas Cage is tied up, and the wife gets drugged with hallucinogens and presented to the cult leader. The cult leader sort of presents himself fully to her with a bit of full frontal nudity and talks about how great he is, etc. And then just when you think the wife is starting to come around, she laughs at him and belittles him in front of all of his followers, and that results in obviously pissing off the cult leader, and he promptly takes her outside and sets her on fire in front of Nicolas Cage, and then just goes home. Obviously Nicolas Cage's character copes with that loss as best he can and sets out to kill all people associated with the cult. That sounds like a very basic premise for the film and a very straightforward premise, but really this film is filled with sequences of acid trips, filters, different film techniques that give it this sort of dreamy, dark, ethereal quality. All the landscapes and the backgrounds of giving this sort of dark, hellish fantasy quality. And Nicolas Cage's character doesn't really say a lot, if much at all, throughout the entire film. A lot of his emotion is through his face and his actions. There's one scene in particular where, after he's escaped following his wife's death, he's in the bathroom and he's just sort of processing everything that's gone on. And some people would say that that is a bad scene because Nicolas Cage might be overacting, but as I said to my wife when we were watching it, what would you do though? Once you sort of had a moment to digest all of this and you know that you're no longer in immediate danger, how would you cope with it? And it's and the camera's going in and out on him, and it's just, it's a good scene. It's like Nicolas Cage being used as Nicolas Cage should. He's being, martial but let go at the same time. The sequences where he has sort of fights and showdowns with the various parties involved are really well done. You get a level of violence and gore, but you don't get it to the point where it takes away from the film. The film's got a sense of humour, but it doesn't get wink wink nudge nudge silly. It's just a really, really different film. Some people will hate it because they just can't get their head around it, and to be honest, you could give up on it inside the first 30 minutes. It's that kind of film where you've either got to bolt yourself in for the whole ride or just call it a day and go, look, I'll watch something else and it's a bit more standard. But once you settle into it, it's good, and it gets more understandable and better as the film progresses. The only gripe with it is that it's probably a bit too long. It clocks in at about 120 minutes. Really, that could be shaved down to 100 minutes, let's say, and take those back end 20 minutes out of it. But this kind of film, I think it gets a little bit of leeway in that respect. It's the kind of film that you can't really just slap on to watch midday. Ideally, you want to watch it in a dark cinema or a pitch black room with the sound turned up and no one on their phones or iPads being distracted, so you can focus totally on the film and get absorbed into it. That's the best way, and it probably helps if you're a little bit assisted, whether that be through alcohol or other means, while you're watching it as well, just to sort of help your brain clock over. It's an interesting film. It's a totally different film. It might well put Nicolas Cage back into sort of the mainstream contention, but it's a very creative film, and it's certainly something that a lot of people will talk about, and I think will polarise a lot of people on their views as well. But it's certainly worth watching if you're interested in that sort of different horror, dark fantasy genre, or those grindhouse type films.